Hey guys, welcome to Nova Legends podcast. I got the 85 TC Williams Titans here. One of the best teams probably in the history of the DC area, won a state championship, lots of great players. And before I introduce them, since we probably have a lot of Alexandria City Titans fans listening, I want to just give our condolences to the McGurk family. Ralph McGurk was a longtime coach at TC Williams, coached the girls team, coached against my sister, Julie Brown, who played at Robinson. I believe I also coached some boys JV basketball at times as well. So he was a good guy, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family and close friends. So anyway, guys, look, as you guys know, sports meant everything in the city of Alexandria. TC Williams at the time, and now obviously it's Alexandria City, was a very special place. It was really the only city school in the Northern Virginia League. So it was always a little bit different. And so when TC Williams is on the schedule, the teams that you were playing were always, I don't want to say scared, but we always knew we were in for a battle. And it was always, you always had great teams. And, it was always a lot of fun to play you guys. So I thought I'd first go around and introduce everyone briefly. And then we can go more in depth. I got Glenn Williams, who I played against in basketball. Great point guard as well as quarterback of the football team. Glenn was ended up going to Holy Cross, play basketball in the Hall of Fame there. I got Larry Bryant. Larry was a defensive back at TC. Went to Norfolk State and played defensive back as well there. I got Shawn McNeil. Shawn, and I always thought it was your twin brother, Rodney McNeil, but I understand that you guys weren't twins. But Shawn was a tight end at TC Williams, went to Maryland and played there as well, started there, had a good career there as well. And I also have Bren Lowery. Bren played running back at TC Williams, also went to University of Maryland. It seemed like back then, University of Maryland was getting a lot of players from Virginia, all over the state, Danville, and it seemed like there was a lot of players going to Maryland at the time. So anyway, guys, welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate you having us, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
So, I'm going to ask for volunteers on the first one. I just want to get your sense. When you change the name TC Williams, obviously, in this day and age, there are certain viewpoints that we're not going to tolerate anymore. But TC Williams stood for a lot more to folks, especially in the sporting world, because when you guys are coming to the gym in basketball, you hear this TC tight end, cheer. It was an iconic name, and I asked Kathy Grimes the same question when we did our podcast. When they changed the name to Alexandria City, so it's still AC Titans. There's still a little ring there. Was it bittersweet to change the name? Obviously there was also the movie. Remember the Titans, and TC Williams was also featured there. So anyway, I was just going to start off with that. Was it bittersweet for you guys when they changed the name to Alexandria City? Anyone want to volunteer to go first?
Well, for me, it wasn't. I didn't have any feelings, one way or the other. You talk about the movie, remember the Titans. It was remember the Titans. Now remember the TC Williams Titans, and so the nickname is still there. The school, when we were there, of course, the school's not even there anymore. It's been shut down or tore down for several years now. So for me, growing up, in the city, it was all about, playing for the Titans, not really going to TC Williams, but just the nickname was more iconic for me than the actual name of the school itself.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Titans was, that was the name we went off of. Titans was the thing that drove us. TC Williams, to me, it meant a lot to me because my sister and my oldest brother went there. And when I was coming up, I always wanted to take on that TC Williams Titans name. So here that it was being changed was a little of a setback, but like you say, we represented the Titans. So
right,
it was all good.
Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Or we?
I think for me personally, it was like about time.
Yeah.
That it was changed. I think we knew when we were in the halls of that school who that person was, what he meant to the history of Alexandria public education, what he meant to the school system. Yes, the name itself, I get the brand, the Titans, TC Titans Express, all of that, you have to kind of change your vocabulary a little bit.
Yeah.
But to see that after, you know, all these generations, all these classes of students, and it took, you know, kind of the world changing behind them as well, to make this movement. So for me, the name change was amazing, but yeah, it's still awkward, you know, having that history attached to who we were, to, you know, the former classes and to the first classes of the school.
Right. Yeah, Bren, you want to add something to that, or?
Being that my sister and brother had a history at TC Williams, at first it was a little kind of, you know, shook me a little bit, but for the most part, I'll piggyback off the fellas. The Titans itself meant more to me than TC Williams, the name. So the Titans meant everything for me, and it still does. So it didn't really change much. It was much more, it was time for a change, I would say as well. So that's my point of view on that.
Sure. Well, great. Well, guys, I think I played against all of you guys. I know I played against Glenn, and I know I played against Shawn, but I played at Robinson. I was class of '84, and I was a really little guy. I mean, I'm 5'10" now, but in high school I was 5'5" when I graduated. So you might remember the really little guy who played football and basketball for Robinson with a big afro. That was me. And you know, it's funny because as you guys know, the western part of the county, there wasn't a lot of African Americans there, and we were all closet Titans fans when we weren't playing. So Robinson wasn't playing, and like my sister wasn't playing. I might vote for Kathy Grimes and TC against the other teams. So we all felt that way, and we always see the TC guys are always coming to Robinson trying to date our girls. So that was something that happened. I know some of you guys on this call probably knew something about that, but anyway, I went to Robinson. I played a little bit of basketball in college. I ended up not playing varsity football. I just played basketball, played against Glenn. I went to UVA and played on the JV team, and I've been up here. I've refereed and coached a little bit. So I stayed involved in sports, but I've been in sales most of my career. So why don't we start with Glenn? I got a kind of funny story about Glenn. So we had young guys that came in after me, Sean Johnson and Mike McDaniel, and Glenn played against them after I graduated. They were the young guards that we had. They were really good. Ended up going to state. And Glenn would go out there and shake me when he would play. And these guys were on JV, and they would laugh at me after the game when the game didn't go so well. And Glenn did this thing after he would score. He would shake someone and pass the ball one way. He would blink his eyes after he would score. So after the game, when we played pickup, they would try to shake me. After they scored, they would run back on the court. They would blink their eyes like Glenn and laugh at me. So they used to have fun at my expense. So I don't know if I ever told you that story, Glenn, but that's a true story. But anyway, why don't you go first? Tell us a little bit about what part of Alexandria you were raised, when you started playing football and basketball, where you went to middle school, because that's a big deal that's a big deal in Alexandria. And then we'll get to the high school career afterwards.
Okay. Well, before my playing days, I actually grew up in Falls Church.
Oh.
So I was a James Lee kid. I lived right across the street from James Lee Rec Center.
Well,
Back in the day, it was James Lee Apartments. Now I'm sure they're condominiums. But yeah, so me and my brother, then my mom and dad, we actually kind of lived there for several years before I started playing organized sports. So my dad bought a house in Alexandria right before we started playing organized sports. So we went to Patrick Henry Elementary School. My brother was 2 years older, than I am. And so we went to Patrick Henry Elementary School, then went on to Hammond Middle School. Mm. He chose after middle school to go to Bishop Ireton and had a good career at Bishop Ireton. Then, of course, I went on to the TC Williams after Hammond Middle School. But when I started, even before sports, I was actually lived not far from Tommy Amaker. I think he was a James Lee kid as well. And he started playing sports day before I did, because he was 2 years older than I was. But before I had a chance to actually play there, we would always hang out there at the rec center, all day, all night, just hang out there, me and my brother. But then when we started playing organized sports, we actually moved to Alexandria, and that's where the history of Alexandria came in at.
It's interesting, Glenn, because most of the TC Williams, the Titans I've talked to since we started doing this, they have lots of family in Alexandria. I mean, they have cousins, they have parents that played it's a family community. So you're
Right.
one of the ones, you didn't have a lot of family that from Alexandria,
I did not. My mom and dad were from North Carolina.
right?
My mom was from the Henderson area, and my dad was from the Fayetteville area. So most of my relatives were actually in North Carolina. The
Right.
reason why they moved up this way is because they majored in education in college, and they got their first teaching position here in Northern Virginia. And so that's what moved us, moved them from the North Carolina area up to Northern Virginia. So I didn't have a lot of family or friends in Alexandria initially when I first moved up to this area.
And what rec center, Kathy and was it Derek Steele? Frank Smith. You guys, your sports were tied to a rec center. Did you play once you moved to Alexandria? Did you play for a rec center?
I did. Patrick Henry.
Okay, I think you
Yeah.
said, okay, good.
Yeah, Patrick Henry. So I'm sure Bren will get into that. Bren and Frank kind of grew up together in that same Core Kelly area. But the rec center that I was tied to was Patrick Henry.
Yeah. Can you imagine as a Robinson point guard and also running back, you got Glenn Williams and Frank Smith on the same Hammond team. I mean, that was that was a pretty hard lineup to go against. So Larry Bryant, why don't you go next? Are you a native of Alexandria? Your family?
I am not a native of Alexandria. I'm about to give you like a real roundabout story of how I even ended up as a part of this group. So my parents are from DC. Grew up in DC. My dad will proudly say he went to 23 different elementary schools before getting to Spingarn. My mother went to Dunbar, and before my dad graduated, he joined the Air Force. He wanted to get, I was born, like a year after the DC riots and everything, after Martin Luther King's assassination. And so he, being the youngest brother, joined the Air Force, wanted to get the hell out of DC area. He ended up stationed in Oahu, Hawaii. So I was less than a year old when I left the DC area. I actually grew up out there, started playing ball out there, about 10 years old as a quarterback, pretty much wanted to be a running back. I think at the time growing up, I remember the Vikings, of course, followed the Cowboys, followed Washington, and I wanted to be Chuck Foreman.
Chuck Foreman, I was going to say that. You do that little spin move, right?
I went briefly, yeah. That didn't last very long.
Oh, okay.
So I came back to DC, the DC area, going to middle school. I went to GW, and the running back, the backfield was already pretty crowded there. I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we go through. Got even more crowded when we got up to TC. But for the first few weeks, I'm just new on campus. No one knew my name, but during the summer, there's just the football team and the band out on the field. Our coach, Coach Marsh, Randy Marsh, didn't know my name either. All he knew was that I had just come from Texas. My dad was stationed in Texas before I came back. So anytime I ran in the wrong hole, fumbled the ball, whatever, ran the wrong direction, you wouldn't hear my name. You just hear Tex, and preceded, followed by a bunch of expletives. So that's where my name began, Tex. And no one, even to this day, calls me Larry, calls me by my actual name. It started as Tex there. And, just coming into this world, meeting, Rodney, Shawn, and then of course, us all coming together at TC. I mean, this kind of represents like a corner of my life that I couldn't have replicated even if I tried. So, I'm glad this conversation has happened. I'm glad to see all these brothers on the screen here, and wow, man.
Was it hard to assimilate into Alexandria? Did you feel like it was travel and that folks, families, and longtime friends were around, or do you feel accepted right away and you made boys right away?
On the field, I think you know, whether it's on the court, whether it's on the field, if you play, if you can catch, if you show up for your teammates, on the field, it doesn't matter. Off the field, it can be challenging just fitting in. You're a kid, you're growing up. There's a lot of things you don't recognize, but the one thing that connects you is what you do on the field, is that team or those colors. So, I mean, I'm sure we all have stories about like the bumps that happen in high school and just kind of fitting in, finding your niche, finding your road. But it's that same bond that kind of tie you forward. So,
Larry, that reminds me when I went to college. I didn't play sports right away, but you're uncomfortable. The first thing I did is go to the gym, or go to the courts and play basketball. And once you're playing your sport, sports are kind of like universal. You just go there, you just do your thing, and that's how you get comfortable. And then as soon as you leave the court, you have to deal with the rest of the stuff. But it's always great to be playing your sport. So Bren, you were a running back in an area that was dominated by great running backs. I mean, if you look at our district, every team had a great running back. Robinson, we had Chris Warren, who I'm sure you knew pretty well. But you were a bruiser. I remember you run the ball, the way you used to cut and stuff. So why don't you give your background a little bit, and then where you went and where you went to middle school?
Well, I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, in the Delray section of Alexandria, Virginia. I started out at Core Kelly Elementary School originally, and started out with the Core Kelly small league football program there, which Glenn was mentioning with me and Frank Smith played together at Core Kelly. Originally, that's originally where I'm from. And my mother and father, originally my family is really not from Alexandria, Virginia. My family originated my father's from Sumter, South Carolina, and my mother is from Little Rock, Arkansas. So majority of the family is from the South or the Midwest. So that's where I originated, my origin come from. But I started out originally from Delray, Alexandria, Virginia. That's where I started out at.
Hey, Bren, were you only a football player, or did you play other sports as well? I don't remember if we played basketball against each other.
I played basketball from the time I started going to Core Kelly at 7 years of age, all the way through to middle school, which was junior high school, which was Hammond Junior High School, and I played with Glenn. Unfortunately, my 8th grade year, I was going to try out for Hammond, but I broke my shoulder. So it kept me out the first year that I could participate in the program. So really, folks knew me originally from the little leagues of Alexandria coming up, and I was just kind of trying to wait my time to try to heal up and get the opportunity to play for Hammond Junior High School. And I finally had that opportunity as a freshman in the 9th grade to have that opportunity to play. And I played basketball and football.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, thanks, Brent. So Shawn, how about you? I mean, you and your brother Rodney you guys were a force. It's tough when, TC, Hammond, George Washington, they have so many great athletes, and then they come with two brothers like you guys. Sometimes if you're Robinson, you don't think life is fair. But so what about you? Where did you guys grow up, and where'd you start playing ball?
Well, I grew up on the south side, which is actually the Patrick Street area. We went to Lee Elementary, and also we also transferred over to MacArthur Elementary also. We played ball there in Lee. Our competition was pretty much Charles Houston. We used to play against them all the time, and they had a great field of athletes that went there. And they used to beat up on us a lot. So we didn't have many victories, but it instilled the concept of, we just wanted to be great football players, and they was helping us during that period of time. My mom and dad my mom and dad was actually from the North Carolina area, which is like Dunn and Fayetteville, North Carolina. And we was actually born in DC. And then my mom and my dad brought a house over in Alexandria, which is actually in the Patrick Street area. And then once we got ourselves together there, my mom and dad decided that we would go to George Washington Middle School. And that's when I played football there with Tex, of course, with my brother Anthony and Rodney, and also too with a slew of other great athletes that followed us over to TC Williams.
Okay, great. Well, let's get to your middle school careers. If you're in the county, in Fairfax County, you don't play high school until freshman year. But a lot of folks in Alexandria, they play eighth grade. Eighth grade, they play on the freshman team, which I'm not sure if they still do that. But I know a lot of you guys. I played against Glenn in basketball and football when he was eighth grader and I was ninth grader. So why don't we start with Glenn? Talk about your freshman year. Was it a big deal if you went to GW or Hammond? I mean, I know you guys were bitter rivals. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Definitely rivals. Yeah. Growing up, since my brother, I wanted to emulate my brother. He was 2 years older than me, so whatever my brother did, I wanted to do. He played football, I wanted to play football. He played basketball, I wanted to play basketball. He played in the band, I wanted to play in the band. So, he went to Hammond first. So I was always looking forward, of course, to going to Hammond. And just from a competition standpoint, it was nothing like it. Normally when you talk about rivals, you talk about high schools, you talk about colleges, the pro level. But it was a real rival between GW and Hammond. It was so much to the point to where it really didn't matter if we didn't win any of our games. If we could beat GW or vice versa, if GW could beat Hammond, your season is met. And that's how serious it was on that level. I can remember our ninth grade year with Bren and I was going over to GW, and it's a true story. I don't know if Shawn and Tex even know this, but we were on the bus, and before we got off the bus in the parking lot, we had to put our helmets on because there were students throwing rocks at the bus. I mean, like boulders, breaking the windows on the bus before we even got off the bus, right? So that's how serious it was. So, it was good competition, very good. Every game was, a very tight-knit game, and, no fights broke out during the game, just clean competition, but it was a definitely a rivalry back in the day for sure.
So Glenn, your eighth grade year, I remember we're taking the bus over to Hammond. Hammond's undefeated, unscored upon. And I'm in the bus, I'm just shivering because I know what's getting ready to happen. I was a running back. And so the first we ran a wing tee, and we had what's called the waggle. Every play looked the same. So you fake the dive, you fake the sweep, you fake the reverse, and then you go long. And I mean, you can give the ball on the dive, you can give the ball on the sweep, but it's called in the huddle. It's not an option. So the first play we do, we go all three fakes, and we go long. And he's wide open in the end zone. Ball hits him in the helmet, falls right down. The guy's name was Tim Kazmarek. We thought we would score a touchdown in the first play of the game. You guys go 38 points in a row. It's 38-0. We run that same play in the last play of the game, and it works. And we scored. And that was the only touchdown, only score you guys had against you the whole season. Do you remember that, Glenn?
I do. I honestly do remember that. I was eighth grade, and Frank, he was a starting quarterback as a ninth grader, and Julius Bird. I mean, we had a phenomenal team, and the only thing they kept saying was, "Don't let them score." Yeah. The game was pretty much won, as you mentioned, but they said, "Don't let them score," and I remember that. I definitely remember that for sure.
I mean, that freshman team could have beaten some varsity teams. I mean, I bet you had 5 or 6 Division I players. Who knows? It was unbelievable. So Larry, Larry's a GW guy, and so let's go to your middle school football and basketball career if you played.
Basketball didn't happen.
Okay.
I was not rooting for basketball, but football. I mean, I came in to this rivalry like that one grade. I was there. And that's if I had learned anything about being ready for that season, that's the game that we had to win, and that the entire season was pretty much made up on. So I thought they were scary at the time because I had no idea. I didn't know who they were. I didn't see them. But then, the games were always hot and contested before I got there. So that's just what I was looking for. looking forward to the entire season. I remember playing, I think we played not Mount Vernon, but Groveton or someone. That's one game I remember that entire season now, but that's the game that I was scared of, pretty much terrified. But it was fun to be in, like I said, getting to know the players, as I was getting to know the area, getting to know the rivalries. And I think the entire year, by the end of that year, it was about knowing who was the best in the area and knowing that between those two schools, GW and Hammond, what we were about to create was going to be special. So I started the year like terrified. I got to the end of the year feeling like we're about to be the Marvel superheroes coming together. So it was an amazing introduction for me. But I always felt like I was just not ready to be a part of this group that entire first year.
Well, it's also pretty intimidating when you look on the varsity. You got Carl Carr, and you got a bunch of great players as well. And then, to be honest, the whole district was loaded. West Springfield won a state in like 80, 81. Robinson was loaded. I'm talking, we got all kinds of Division I talent. Oakton had the Burmeisters. I mean, if you look around, Woodson had Coach Cox, and they had Andy Heck. They had Marshall Jefferson.
Oh my God!
But I mean, it was just so much talent. So Bren, why don't you go next? You're another Hammond guy. Did you play freshman 2 years? Did you play as an 8th grader as well, or you just play? Oh, you broken your shoulder?
Yeah, I broke my shoulder. I started out at Hammond in the 9th grade.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah.
And
go ahead.
No. Who's your coach at Hammond?
Coach Furman, Glenn Furman was the coach.
He was a freshman coach
at TC Williams. Yeah.
Right. And how'd you do your freshman year? Did you start at the running back? And
actually, I knew all the guys prior to the start of the freshman year, and I knew that the competition that I had in front of me. So I was just looking forward to playing with Glenn, because I had already built that relationship with Glenn and a couple of other guys on the team. So I was already prepared to fight for the starting position as running back. So during the preseason training camp, as you will say, I kind of stood out, and Coach Furman decided to give me the shot as a starting running back at Hammond on my freshman year. And that's where it all started.
Right.
And we went from there.
Yeah. Were you guys undefeated also like the year before that year?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we went.
Yeah. Well, how about you, Shawn? So Shawn, I don't know if you played for GW as an 8th grader, but one of the funniest basketball, one of the funniest moments is when we played GW in basketball. It was me against Eric Galloway. So yeah. I must have been 4'11", 5 foot. Eric was 5'1", 5'2". Eric was stocky though. He was well put together, and the crowd was just laughing the whole game. And we went at it. We went 78 feet up and down, and it was a great game. They had Joe King, and it was a really fun game. I'll never forget those games. But anyway, tell us about your GW career.
Well, yes, I was on that team. I didn't get too much playing time then because they did have some fantastic basketball players at that point in time.
They did.
I was played 8th grade ball too, and I wanted to play wide receiver because my biggest fan was Lynn Swan. I always wanted to be Lynn Swan. He was all over my house, in my bedroom, everything. So, but I was told I had to be a backup quarterback to Galloway. So I did, but towards the end of the year, I think he was suspended or something. So I actually got the starting job as the quarterback on GW's team. And then that following year, that's when I was given the starting job with all the great athletes that I played with. And we went undefeated that year too. The only game that we needed to beat and had to beat was against Hammond. And we fought tooth and nail, but at the end, they beat us. So the same thing for basketball, my 9th grade year too. We went undefeated in that year too, and had to play Hammond at Hammond. And yeah, they got us at the end on that one also too. So we're used to losing against Hammond's team every year, but we knew, like Larry said, we knew this team was going to get together and was going to come to TC and we knew we was going to do something special because of the talent that was coming from GW and Hammond. So
Yeah.
it was great playing against those guys.
Yeah, it was a good time. Hope there's video or YouTube video of some of those games. That'd be fun to watch. Glenn, we didn't talk about your basketball, your freshman year at Hammond, your ninth grade year at Hammond. Did you play TCJV or did you play for Hammond your freshman year?
So I played 8th and 9th grade at Hammond,
Okay.
and I had an opportunity to get moved up to JV my freshman year, but I just made the decision to kind of stay back and, and play with my friends on the freshman level on my 9th grade year.
Okay.
So I played 8th and 9th grade, and had good times there. Brent, he's kind of modest. He kind of came on the scene in the 9th grade because of his injury, but he was phenomenal athlete. He was MVP of the football team, MVP of the basketball team, and just some great athletes. It was an honor for me really to play with these guys, just because of the talent level, that they had. So, but I think I enjoyed my 8th grade year a little bit more than my freshman year, because 8th grade, no one really expected anything out of me. Frank was the man, if you will, and then we had a couple other guys on the team. So I was playing in the shadow, and I love playing in the shadow. I didn't mind that whatsoever. So to come 9th grade, the target was on my back a little bit more, because I had experience from my 8th grade year. But I had tremendous success. I had great coach in 8th grade, Coach Evans, Mike Evans. He went on, I think, and coached at Mount Vernon later on in the years. But excellent coach, X's and O's, just really knew the fundamentals about basketball. And so I really enjoyed the 8th grade year. Not too much pressure at all. 9th grade had a little bit more pressure because I was a little bit more known, the year after that. But basketball went really well on the middle school level.
Right. Okay. Well, before we get to your guys' high school, your varsity careers, one thing that has come up in a lot of the podcasts I've done with Titans players is that you have to get this card signed in basketball. So, they had so much talent in that building all the time. I mean, one thing everyone says is there was better players in the halls and on the courts for the basketball team. Was that a factor in football too? Did they have? It was Mike Heinzen that was really I hear enforcing that. Was that a problem in football also? Did you have to get that card signed on a weekly basis to be eligible? Anybody can answer.
Well, we had to get cards signed in middle school also. I mean, it was something that followed us through middle school all the way to high school. You knew you had to go to class. You had to get that card signed. So that was a big input factor into us playing sports in the whole process, because we knew, and we was used to it. We knew when we went to TC Williams, we knew we had to do the same thing. You knew you had to get that card, because when we got to TC, if your card wasn't signed, especially for basketball, if you didn't get that card signed, you wouldn't just miss one game. You could miss 2 or 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Anyone else would add to that? Also about TC was interesting is that you guys play day games. Your home games were daytime, which was really cool because all the other teams could come watch, because everyone else played on Friday. So if TC was playing on Saturday, a home game, all the players from around the county around the area would come watch. What did you guys think about that? What was the history of the Saturday game, and did you guys like it? And that could be anyone. Who wants to take this one first?
Well, me personally, I wish we had night games at TC Williams. However, I enjoyed the opportunities we had. It didn't matter really. We didn't care if it was night or evening for the most part. We just wanted to play. We loved the game of football. Mm-hmm. We had a team that was determined. We had a team that was confident, and we knew that it didn't matter. I'm speaking for everyone, but I'm speaking for myself also. But I'm saying that it didn't really matter, mm-hmm. if it was night or day. And so the mentality, the disposition, the mentality that we had we was focused on winning the game. It didn't really matter, and that's where we were. Yeah, with it.
Okay, so Glenn, I see what you're saying about Brent. He's being a little modest here. So I, I remember, look, we traveled well. I don't know if you guys noticed, especially our junior and senior year. Wherever we played, Titans showed up. Red, white, blue, the news, coaches, scouts, everyone showed up. Our away games were like home games in a way. Our junior year, before we kind of reached that peak, I remember, going out to Robinson, going out to W.T. Woodson, and we felt like we were bringing our A game every time, as well as the crowd. Those Saturday games, especially in our senior year, that was like must-see TV. Everyone in the DC area came out to see us. People across the river at H.D. Woodson, from all the DC schools that thought they could beat us or should play us will come out to see us. So I love the field now. I love the idea that the school now can play night games, host those big time Friday night games. But those Saturday games were special. Like I wouldn't trade that in for anything.
Yeah, I agree. There was something really special about playing over at TC. We didn't win very often, but it was still special. Anyone else want to add to that? Or
I just want to say, the Friday games, not having Friday games was kind of nice, because when we used to go out to other games that were played on Friday nights, teams that we know we had to play the week after that, it was kind of intimidating for them to see all of us on the sidelines with our jerseys on, knowing that they was going to have to face us a couple of weeks from now. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the intimidation factor, even though we didn't need it, because we all felt that we were that good that we didn't even need that. And I kind of enjoyed the fact that our games was on Saturday and everybody got to watch us play, because we were going to give you a show. I mean, every Saturday we was giving you a show. So that it was no question about that.
Yes, some great games. Glenn, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, playing on Saturday afternoon, we didn't have a choice. And so for me, it just made the Friday night games a little bit more special. It's a different atmosphere, but they were rare games in Virginia that was being played on Saturday. A lot of DC public schools were playing, on Saturday afternoons. But mentally, because we knew we didn't have any lights, that's just what we had to do as far as play on Saturday afternoon. So for me personally, it made Friday nights, like Shawn said, even that much more special. Gave us a chance to kind of go out and see other teams that we were going to play, even though we would have been well prepared, the week of going into the game. It just made Friday nights a little bit more special for me because of the atmosphere. But so it didn't really matter to me one way or the other. It's just how it was, because we didn't have any lights.
Yeah.
In the stadium.
Well, let's Glenn Furman was the varsity coach. Is that right? Yeah.
Right.
Let's go around and first of all, since we're going to focus more on the 85 season, just talk a little bit about your career until your senior season, so how you did your sophomore and junior season, and how about a little reflection about Coach Furman, what you thought about him, his style, whether you thought he was effective and motivating and inspiring you. Glenn, why don't you start?
Well, Coach Furman was the only coach that I had, really. Like Bren said, at Hammond, he was my coach in the 8th and 9th grade.
That's right.
And then when we moved up to TC in the 10th grade, we were all playing varsity. That was his first year as the head varsity coach at TC Williams. So I had a pretty good foundation as far as what he was about. To me, from an X and O standpoint, was a genius. He just was a great motivator, knew the right things to say. My 10th grade year, it was a development for all of us. You go from freshman, playing to varsity. And so it was a little bit of a learning curve on the 10th grade year. And then it got a little bit more easier in 11th grade, and 12th grade was pretty special as well. But I felt kind of comfortable with Coach Furman because I had known him 2 years prior to him being our varsity coach, at TC Williams. He kind of slow walked me because the offense had to learn, how to run the option. There's a lot of different techniques and things like that, decisions you had to make. And so for me personally, because I had him as my coach 2 years prior to TC, made the transition a lot more smoother for me.
And Glenn, you weren't a big guy, and I think because you played basketball, you probably didn't lift that weights that often. Did you take a beating out there on the football field running the option?
Not really. I try to play smart. I try not to have anybody get a solid hit on me because I was pretty small. My 10th grade year, actually, I was a backup quarterback. Mike Murray was a starting quarterback.
That's right.
And I started on defense. I was a safety.
Yeah.
And so I started on the defense my 10th grade year. Mike got injured early in the year, I think maybe second, third game out into it, which caused me to, be the starting quarterback. And so we had pretty good success, that run of like 6-7 games. So then the decision was, what does coach do? Does he put Mike back in as the starting quarterback, or, do I continue to play? Mentally, I was okay with, playing defense, knowing I was going to have my time, in the next couple of years. And so what he did, he instead of alternating the plays from the sidelines, from the wideouts, he would alternate Mike and I every other play. So Mike would be, he'd be in the game, and all of a sudden, Coach Furman would give me the play, and then I would go in for one play, and Mike would come out. And so it was kind of hard to get a rhythm, but ultimately, I think it worked out, toward the end. So that was a little bit of adjustment as well.
Yeah, Mike was an underrated point guard too, or shooting guard. He kind of was in between. He did a great job, and I think he almost won a state title.
There's no question. Yeah, my sophomore year, he was a senior, and we lost the state championship to Marshall Walker by 1 point. And Mike actually hit a shot at half court, or right in front of half court, went in, but the referee said it was after the buzzer. So that would have actually won a state championship that year.
Did you guys ever see video? Did you ever see video of that shot?
Oh yeah, my dad, he was faithful, and he taped every football game, every basketball game. So I watched that thing about 1,000 times.
So you think it was good?
I definitely think so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was there. I was there cheering.
Yeah.
Well, so Larry, how about you? So you get out, you graduate from GW, you go to TC. Did you play varsity as your sophomore year, and also your junior year? And what you thought about Coach Furman?
He was the other coach. Coming from GW, he was just the other coach. Coming in, obviously once we got on the same campus, he was my coach. He was our coach. But going into it, I think. And by the way, this might be for another podcast, but some people wanted number 88 to be in the backfield too. So that's for another conversation at another time. But yeah, I didn't, because he was the head coach, I was more, kind of connected to, I think we all were kind of more connected to our position coaches. So Coach Allen, well, it wasn't Coach Allen for me. I think the first week or a couple of weeks, that first summer as a sophomore, again, the backfield was crowded. It was me, it was Rodney, it was Bren. There was, probably like 4 or 5 others who were there and who were coming. So it was a lot of people out there. I remember running out from the backfield. I caught a pass over my head. It was thrown over, caught it one hand. I think someone said, okay, why don't you try cornerback? And I never played defensive back before. Like corner, like really play corner. I played safety where you just kind of light up and go. But it was a kind of a natural fit. And then again, being connected to my position coach, the defensive coaches, Coach Shaw, Coach Johnson, Coach Allen in the backfield. It was kind of a natural transition. I felt like defense, like I can hit people now and not take the hits. So, and I wanted to challenge myself, and I felt like the receivers we had my sophomore year were among the best, if not the best, in the region. So I was getting like the best workouts every day during the week, during practice. And with Glenn and the just how the offense looked against others, it challenged us to be stronger. Like that veer, that triple veer, that with the RPOs they call them now, scared the hell out of me. But learning through that system on the defensive side, it's like being bronzed, being burnt in iron, just being strengthened every day, being tested that way. But again, Coach Furman, I know, he wanted the best out of all of us. There was a lot of stuff all of us kind of took and as motivation, as challenges, as just kind of bits of wisdom or just moments that we kind of look back at now, and positive, negatively, they kind of help build us. So I wouldn't have maybe I was going to say I wouldn't have kind of crafted those 3 years or those 4 years any other way, but there's probably a few things we all could substitute out. Wearing a horse collar as the cornerback. I would never, against Mount Vernon, I would never do that again. But yeah, those first couple of years, I think was just a lot of pressure. We knew we were going to be good. It was just a lot of pressure, I think, on us of, testing each other, pushing each other, and fulfilling long before our senior years. I think it was just knowing how we wanted to build it, and no one set higher or harder expectations on us than we did. It started with the head coach, and it went throughout, and we all kind of built ourselves in different ways. And I think we're proud of that, proud of the results of that.
Yeah, it's tremendous. So I don't know if Bren's mic's working, but let's go to Shawn. So you, it sounded like Larry's trying to say you may not have played in the backfield because of there might have been a Hammond GW thing going on here. So
I didn't say any of that.
So what happened when you went to TC, and fill us in what happened in your sophomore and junior years?
Well, technically, when we went to TC after our freshman year, we knew it was going to be some challenges, because when we heard that he got the head coaching job for TC, we knew then it was going to be a little, whether he was going to want to put us in positions to, be successful. We was a little concerned about that. So when I first got to TC, I really wanted to play JV. I did not want to play varsity my sophomore year. I wanted to be with my guys, because most of my guys coming from GW was playing on the JV squad. So, but of course, coaches came to me and said, "No, Shawn, that's not our concept. We want you to play varsity." So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna play varsity." But when I did, I didn't get much playing time. So I had some conversations with my coach, freshman coach, Marsh, down there, and I asked him. I said, "Look, I think I want to trade. I want to go somewhere else." And he was like, "No, just stick in there. It's going to work out. It's going to work out." And one of our wide receivers ended up getting hurt. I forgot what game it was. And I got the starting position. And ever since then, me and Furman had a relationship. I wasn't going to say it's a great relationship, but we had a relationship where we both was on the same level as far as we just want to win football games. And I was on the same page. I just want to win football games. Whatever I can do to help this team win football games, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So over the years, like Bryant said, he did some things to get under your skin because he wanted you to perform at the highest level. And sometimes it didn't seem like it was like that, but at the same time, did he get the best performance out of me? Yes, he did.
Yeah. Tell us about your sophomore and junior year, and also, I guess the backfield was crowded. How you navigated that crowded backfield, and also what you thought about playing for Coach Furman.
Well, I started out, of course, I played with Coach Furman in the 9th grade at Hammond. And so the transition for me was pretty easy, because I was already kind of used to his, I would say, coaching tactics of being motivated. He was a motivator. And so you had learned to have a deaf ear for certain things that he would say. And so I learned that throughout the years, my freshman year at Hammond. So when I got to TC Williams, it was actually an easy transition as far as dealing with Coach Furman and his, he had a strong personality when it came to ways he would communicate to you on the field. And I'm just kind of saying that in a very nice way. And so you had to be able to adapt to that and not let that affect your performance on the field. When I got there at TC Williams, they already had a backfield that was pretty loaded. as well. Of course, I tried out with the varsity instead of the JV. So as a sophomore, I felt that I could be competitive enough to try to see if I can get some playing time. And so the backfield they had at that time, they had, if I recall, they had Julius Byrd and they had Durrell Belt. Yeah. And so the backfield was pretty crowded at that time from a varsity standpoint. But I kind of fought my way in and earned some time as a running back, as a sophomore on the varsity squad. So I did pretty good. Had some, I thought I did pretty good. I kind of opened a lane for me as far as an athlete my sophomore year. And so, during that course of that year, I injured my right hand and my right thumb. And so it eliminated me from having the opportunity to keep competing that year. So that's what took place with that. But as the guys mentioned, Furman was he was a great coach though. X and O's, he was great. He knew play calling. He was really great with that. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't trade him for the world. I kind of wish we had that type of coach when I was playing football at Maryland University. It would have been, I think it would have been special. He was a great motivator. No disrespect to Coach Ross. Of course, I had the only opportunity to play with Coach Ross for those 2 years that I was there, or the 2 years that he was there during my tenure there. Of course, I had 4 years there, but he had left my redshirt freshman year to go to Georgia Tech. But he would have been great as a college coach. I personally feel that because of his motivation and his way of coaching.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think that existed as well. I mean, we're talking from our perspective coming in, learning kind of the history there, kind of sliding in the best way we can as sophomores on the big campus now, is Furman's following a legend. Like Boone was there before, and a lot of people weren't happy with him being gone for a variety of reasons. Obviously, there was obviously there was a bunch of influences that made the previous year his last year. But that transition also, I think, had raised a lot of eyebrows amongst the people who, kind of follow those things in the city, especially this school and the dynamic it had between the high school and the rest of the city. So
now,
there was
Larry,
a
I'm sorry. I was going to say, you got to tell us why Boone left, because we all know who Boone is, and you watch the movie and it never really is explained. When I used to referee basketball years later, he was keeping the clock or doing the scoreboard or something. So I'd see him, and I knew who he was. This is probably actually even before the movie. But why did Boone leave?
Well, I don't think he left. I think he was asked to leave.
Yeah,
he stepped down. And it was 10 years or so since the last championship. And, being that the team had been, I guess, mediocre to that point, and a lot of the things that were tolerated, if you will, earlier in his career was less tolerated because they weren't winning. Exactly. And there was just a general, push or influence from people in the city or maybe even in the academic section of just, school board, whatever, that they just wanted to have different faces representing the school and its leadership. So there was a lot of that. I mean, obviously we're kids, we're kind of behind the scenes, but a lot of those influences were pretty obvious at the time, and a lot of us were talking about it. But again, once we got on the only things we could control was what was happening on the field and in the classroom. So that's where we put our heads and our minds. But we knew that there was some challenges happening above us that we really couldn't control. So
it was interesting because Ed Henry, and then Yost were at Robinson, so we knew them well. But we had no idea that Yost and Henry had been through all that. For us, they were just great coaches. But it's just so funny when the movie came out, they both came out looking really, really good, and so that was kind of cool. So, well, let's go to the historic fall of 1984. A year. You guys are 85, but I guess the fall of 84 is when you guys won the championship. And let's just give your reflections about that year. I don't really recall who you beat in the championship, but why don't each of you guys kind of give your reflection of what happened that year? And plus going into the year, did you guys think that this was the year you guys were going to win the whole thing? Glenn, you want to go first?
Sure. One thing I like to say about Coach Furman was he created vision. And so even though some of his tactics, like Brent said, you just had to kind of get used to, he was a man of, he created vision for us and discipline. And so he would always tell us, this is a 3-year project. In our minds, we were trying to win it every year, of course, right? But he said it's going to take maybe 3 years to get to where he believes we can, do some very special things. And so coming off our junior year was disappointing because we had lost in the playoffs to Mount Vernon. And so, that was a very tough game there at home. And, for me personally, I took that very hard because the whole year, I think I might have thrown 2 interceptions. That game, I threw 3 because weather conditions was pretty strong. Wind, a whole lot of things were taking place. So I felt really bad for our team. And so going into next year, it was, we were ranked preseason 9th in the country going into that year. And so we had enough motivation, to make it a very special year. One thing that I think helped us quite a bit was that at every other practice, James Brown, that's when he first started covering high school sports back in the area. And he would be at our practices like every other practice. And so that was a lot of motivation for us to be there on time, to do our drills, because we wanted to get home and see who was going to be on the news, for that whole week, So whatever motivation we needed, everything was there for us. Everything was there to do some special things. And well, he created that vision, amongst us, saying, hey, it might take us 3 years, but our 3rd year, we just knew we had a pretty special opportunity to do some good things that year.
Yeah, well, it was a heck of a year. Well, Shawn, why don't you go next? What are your memories of that historic season? I think who did you guys? You had to have beaten Robinson that year because we had Chris Warren. I know we were good that year. What were some of the big rivals that you had, and your other memories?
Well, Robinson was our district rivalry. We knew we had to beat Robinson. We knew we had to stop Chris Warren. So our defense came up with a scheme to do that. One little tidbit, they tried to put me in a position in defense. I don't know if Larry remember this. They tried to put me in a position to guard Chris Warren as like a hybrid type strong safety. And I would come up and try to hit Chris Warren, and it wasn't doing any good. He was still running for an extra 10 yards. So what they did, they changed me out and put my brother in there, which is smaller in stature.
That's
and
it.
I'm telling you, that was the greatest move we ever made in that game.
That's it.
Because he followed Chris Warren. He had negative 10 points at 10 yards at halftime.
Is that right?
So we knew right then we were starting to do some great things. And after that game, I think we beat them. I think it was like what,
21-8.
Huh?
21-8.
21-8.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got the score like right there.
Yeah.
They scored
I think Chris Warren had about 16
yards.
Yeah, right. He didn't even score at all. He didn't even get his out. Did he get over 30 yards? I don't even think he got 30 yards.
16 yards.
No, I remember Chris Warren his junior year. We played him. They beat us. I think they beat us 3-0. It was in the rain, and he did like a sweep right. It was pitch right and then cut back left, and about 3 or 4 of us tackled him out of bounds into the water, into the mud. He gets up, says, "You can't hurt me. I'm an All-American." from that point on, with that next year, that senior year, was like, nah, not today, Chris.
Not today.
Not today. Not
Right.
today.
Not
The reality is Chris is probably the nicest guy in the world. I know he is he's the nicest guy in the world. I hadn't seen him in many years. We lost contact. He was in the NFL, and he just showed up at my father's funeral. I didn't even know how he knew about it. And then we reconnected. He's the greatest. I know Glenn could tell some funny stories about him and James Clark dunking on each other. And I was already at school, that's a whole nother podcast, but they had a great basketball rivalry too.
Yeah.
So,
That game they were talking about, the Robinson game, it was very important because it was #1 team in the state versus #2 team in the state.
is that right?
Yeah, and it was toward the end of the year. So whoever lost, good possibility not to advance, in the playoffs. So it was a must win. It's a lot different these days than it was, back in the day. So it was a must win, for both games. But from a big game standpoint, I want to mention this. Our 10th grade year, I'm telling you, it's probably one of the most exciting games I've ever been in. And it was at Madison High School.
Absolutely.
And it was pouring down rain.
Yeah.
They were ranked #1 in the state.
Yeah.
#1. They had a quarterback named Tim Heck, I think it was. He went to Alabama. And then their running backs, one went to West Virginia and the other one went to North Carolina State. So we went in as the underdog.
Oh, and they had that middle linebacker.
And had a middle linebacker.
Yeah.
Pouring down rain, right? So long story short, we win the game, but that game there, and I'm telling you, was Shawn's signature game because he was a 10th grader. And in my mind, he was the best wide out in the area anyway. But that game right there solidified that, in my opinion, for him. And he went on and received the all-region, Northern Region as a 10th grader. And so I say that to say that game there was probably one of the biggest games that I've ever been a part of. And to witness, what Shawn did on that field. Shawn didn't have any weaknesses. So when Tex mentioned about Shawn being in the backfield, because he could have been quarterback as well, he had the size, the athleticism, the ability to play any position on the field. And Coach Furman knew that. And so I had no idea he was going to put him where he put him. I'm thankful that he did for sure. But Shawn was a person that did not have any weaknesses in his game whatsoever.
I was coming for your position. He was like, I remember some games where, we're ahead. The other team, we know they're going to pass. Shawn pop up at free safety. We all slide over. But yeah, Shawn was coming for your position.
And he still had he had a brother too. So
yeah.
So before we get to Bren and Larry on this, Robinson had really bad luck those 3 or 4 years. Probably your freshman year, we had one of our best players die in preseason. It was terribly traumatic for the team. And that just ruined our year. His name was John Walsh. He was a starting linebacker. We were all right there. He died in preseason conditioning. And the next year, every year we were favored to win the division, or either first or second with you guys. The next year, we had scored on West Springfield the last play of the game, we thought, with 1 second left in the game. And they returned the kick, and they went down the sideline. They threw the ball to the other side of the field. The guy caught it, went all the way for a touchdown. Tom Osborne, he played for UNC, really fast guy, slipped on the play, and they beat us on the last play of the game. So we didn't qualify that. And then your year, I mean, Robinson had terrible luck. And I mean, we had great teams every year, but every year it was either TC, it was Springfield, it was always something. But anyway, to get back to this is not about Robinson. Let's get back to the Titans. So Bren, what about you? Your senior year? What are your reflections, your memories of that historic year?
Wow, what a great year! Far as an athlete, I playing with the best players you could ever possibly play with. We had athletes across the board in every position. At the end, we were ranked number, I think, 3 in the nation, USA Today. and we were ranked for a reason. And that was because we had scholarship players across the board, Division I scholarship players. And actually all of them should have been playing in a top Division I school. We had that much talent on the team. But it was a great team to play with. We had a lot of fun together. It was like a machine, and it started out in training camp. I remember that senior year. I believe we had a preseason kind of game against Danville, Virginia, if I recall. And
always
they kind of
always a top team. Always.
Yes, they were very tough, and they prepared us. I believe a couple of us got injured in that preseason game, and they kind of propelled us for the first game of the year. But not to mention, I have to mention my sidekick, my running back brother, Rodney McNeil. It was just an exciting time in the backfield when he joined me in the backfield alongside with the great wide receiver Shawn McNeil, and of course Glenn Williams. And it was an attack that was awesome. Yeah. You know, it didn't matter. It was easy. I would say it should have been easy for Glenn to decide which way he wanted to go. And he could go any way he wanted to go.
That was hard, man. That was hard.
You could go any way you wanted to go.
We never fought over the ball, though. That's what I say about this team. Nobody ever fought over the ball. I never went to Glenn, tell him I needed the ball. Brent never went to Glenn and said I needed the ball. Glenn was we call Glenn Silk. Because he was smooth as ice. I mean, nothing fazed him. Smooth. Nothing. We didn't have to worry about Glenn being rattled or frustrated or mad or taken out of his game because he threw an interception. Glenn was always the same way every time we played.
That's right.
We knew for sure if Glenn was like that, we had to be the same way. So he represented us well on that on that state championship team.
Most definitely.
It's interesting because that's a team. I mean, you guys had speed, you had athletic ability, you had great coaching. You know, you guys had it all. Yeah. But you have to share the ball. The year before, TC's basketball team, they had talent. They had Tyrone Shaw, they had Calvin Wood, you had Garrett Bailey. Everybody wanted the ball. everybody wanted to shoot it. And that team could have probably won, you know, the region and state also. But I remember they used to fight over that ball because they all could score. And I think that was the key to this football team, is that when you have a lot of weapons, sometimes it's difficult to decide which way you're going to go, and you have to be able to, you know, make those right decisions. So Larry, let's get to you, or Tex. Let's get to you. So what do you think about that last year, and especially the postseason? Maybe you can tell us about the postseason, who you guys beat.
Well, I was just, as everyone was answering, I was just thinking, like, I personally, you know, I learned how to play football as a kid, right? I learned how to be a running back. I learned how to just play football. By the time I got to my senior year, and I think we can all probably say this in different ways, I learned how to be an athlete. Like, it was about paying attention to detail. It was about understanding my body. It was about understanding my mind throughout the process. It was about, you know, kind of appreciating the growth of seeing how we came together. Like, coming into that last year, I mean, Mount Vernon, even to this day, seeing that maroon, hearing that name, going down 400 Road, any of that, it gives me PTSD. But coming into that senior year, I mean, I know the media was anointing us already. There was preseason, the Post had a big spread on us. The local Alexandria, Northern Virginia papers had spreads on us. Like, we were expected to be the team that everyone is waiting for now that we're all seniors. So it felt easy, like the season did. The season, like, we as a defense, we wanted to shut people out. We felt like that was automatic. If anyone scored on us, we were disappointed. So the season itself felt automatic. It was what we did once we got to the playoffs and kind of fulfilling, getting to that point and then playing on that final field, I think might have been not the hardest challenge, but probably the least challenging part of that entire process, because the game before against that team from Pulaski County was something else. It challenged us in a whole different way. But throughout just all the different challenges and whether it was on the field or off the field, or just kind of growing, getting to learn each other as young men. Like that first year at GW, I was terrified of whoever Hammond was and what they were going to hammer me with. But by the time I got, to my senior year, I felt like this is why we're here. And we felt like it was inevitable. I know the week or weeks between the region championship and the actual game, I know there was a little concern briefly on my part of being at the game, because that was a Prince concert that happened on the very same day as the state championship, and I think
I knew you were going to mention Prince.
Yeah, I did too.
There was some who were worried that I might not show up for the bus to Charlottesville. But no, there was nothing that was, I mean, to this day, I still have the recording of the game, the original recording. It's, everything about that year was magical, and just the process and the journey that kind of launched us to that point, I think is what made that moment worthwhile. And then of course, finishing our year there, and then everyone kind of moving on, looking back on it, it was just, I wouldn't have done it any differently.
What is it about Prince? Can't you just buy the album and all the singles? I mean,
No, he was in town. He was at the Capitol Center.
Not text.
when people love Prince, I mean, they really love Prince. You just can't like Prince. People just love Prince. I mean,
This was the Purple Rain tour, man. Come on.
Man, it was a theme.
yeah, I got so many friends just like you, man. They used to start talking about Prince. And, they could talk for hours about Prince.
Right.
But going back to the top, like understanding like that whole process, like one thing that I think helped kind of guide throughout the entire growth of for me personally, not just being on the field, but as a student and as a young man, was like being a part of the track team, and how we kind of learned about my body, learned from like Coach Johnson, who also coached track, about some of the things that we couldn't necessarily talk to our coaches about in football, we could talk to Coach Johnson with. So it kind of helped, with the additional time, spent with, teammates on the field. We're also, traveling on track, doing relays. So it kind of added that additional bond, getting to know one another, of kind of, again, growing and paying attention to those details that allow us to succeed, again, not just on the court, not just on the field, but everywhere we could. So it kind of helped solidify that brotherhood, that family, both, again, on the field and in the classroom.
I mean, it's one thing having a lot of talent, but it's still hard to put it all together and actually win a title. There's a lot of talented teams out there that never win titles. We've all seen so many of them. So Glenn, why don't we talk to what came next? I know that you are a gifted basketball player, as I talked about. I know I found out the hard way. And did you ever entertain the idea of playing football at the next level, or were you always going to play basketball? Because I was actually surprised you and Frankie played basketball. As good as you were in basketball, I actually thought both of you guys were going to play football.
Yeah, I always knew that I was going to play basketball if I had the opportunity. I was a small guy, and in my personal opinion, the reason why I was recruited in football the way I was because of the guys that's on this podcast. Is because they came to see Bren, they came to see Shawn, they wanted to see Tex. I just happened to be the quarterback, right? And so we had a real good year that year. So with success comes, some responsibility, and it comes some attention. And so I knew that just because the guys on our team were being recruited by everyone in the country, I was going to get probably some looks as well. So I did take some visits of football, as a matter of fact, I just wanted to kind of experience it, the recruitment of the process. As a matter of fact, Bren and I went to Wake Forest. We visited Wake together. You remember that, Bren?
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to Wake together. But in the back of my mind, I always knew I wanted to play basketball, you know, because if I played college football, I didn't want to play any other position, you know, but quarterback. But I was so small at the the level that I was being recruited at, I was going to be converted to defensive back or wide receiver, you know, that sort of thing. So, but in the back of my mind, I always knew it was going to be basketball if I had the opportunity.
If I may add, if you remember that recruiting trip, Muggsy Bogues was our chauffeur. He was the one that took us out.
That's cool.
Bogues in there and Kevin Green, because they was both roommates together. And they was our chauffeurs that weekend.
Yeah.
Well, Glenn, why don't you tell us a little bit about your college career? I mean, you're in the Hall of Fame at Holy Cross.
Had a good 4 years there. The conference then was called the Metro Athletic Conference, the MAC. And the teams that were in the conference were teams like LaSalle, Fordham, Iona, Manhattan. So it was pretty St. Peter's. So it was pretty competitive. My first year there, I played behind an All-American point guard. He wound up getting hurt, just like Mike Murray got hurt. He got hurt, I think, like the fourth or fifth game into the season. I came on board, and then he was such a good player that they transitioned him from the point guard to the shooting guard position. So I was able to start 3.5 years and had tremendous talent there. You know, we had some guys from the DC area, Baltimore, Chesapeake, Virginia. My only regret is that I never had the opportunity to experience the NCAA tournament because LaSalle had beaten us like 4 years in a row. LaSalle had Lionel Simmons, the L Train, Dougie Overton was the point guard, Tim Legler, you know, the guy that played with the Bullets back in the day.
With Jared Tucker.
And they were all my year. And so every year we would bump heads. So I never had the opportunity or experience in the NCAA tournament. So if I had any regrets, if you will, that's probably would be one. But that New England area up there, I love their basketball. You think about tradition, you think about the Boston Celtics, and our campus was nowhere, you know, from, you know, where the Garden was back in the day. So I really enjoyed the experience there from a college perspective.
Yeah. Glenn, my sister went to Manhattan College briefly for 2 years. Then she transferred to GW. She played basketball for the Jaspers. But so Shawn, you ended up you were a huge prospect, a huge a high school prospect, probably 5-star, what they call them today, and you ended up going to University of Maryland. So how'd you make that decision, and tell us about your career at Maryland?
First of all, I wanted to stay close to home. You know, I felt that I needed that support. I know me and Brent, we went on a recruit to Miami, and we were both out there. We got a chance to ride on Jimmy Johnson's boat with him, along with a ton of other great recruits. And me and Brent, we went to a cookout at one of the alumni's house that night, and we sat on a bridge, and we were sitting there talking. We was trying to discuss whether we wanted to go to another school or whether we wanted to go there. And at the time, Brent was like, he was really stuck on Clemson. And I was like, I think I want to go to Maryland. So once we left that trip, we got back, and I decided, look, I'm just going to go ahead and take the deal. Bobby Ross had came to the house, and we sat down, we talked, and decided that was a good place for me to be. And then I realized that Brent was going too. So I was like, oh, this is perfect, you know? So I decided to say, let's try this. But at the same time, I knew it was going to be difficult for me because I knew I didn't perform well in the classroom when I was at TC. So I knew it was going to be very challenging, and it was. So I had some setbacks and had to start over again and try to apply myself all over again, which I thought I did pretty well. But of course, academics said, no, I did not. So I was suspended from that. And then I tried to go off to Western Kentucky, and I went down there and did really well. But they had some scandal stuff going on down there as well. So after that, I was pretty much done with the school aspect of trying to get myself to the next level to be able to play at the next level. So I kind of came out of that and worked out for a couple of teams and stuff like that, but just nothing ever happened. So that was pretty much my college career.
Yeah. Well, you had a heck of a high school career, and no one can take those memories away from us.
Oh, absolutely. I cherish those because a lot of the guys that I played with, they were saying how they wish they had the career a lot of us had in high school. So
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I never even got out of the districts in basketball. And so the career you guys have, those moments, you can just treasure them forever. So, I mean, it's very special. How about you, Brent? So I know you were on the boat, on the yacht with Shawn over here and
Oh,
you were
yeah.
from Maryland. Did you have the same thought process? So,
Yeah, I pretty much had the same thought process. I was being recruited heavily by Clemson at the time. And really, I thought I was going to Clemson. And when we went to the trip, me and Shawn, to Miami, actually, that trip included Eric Metcalf and Chris Warren. So we all were on that trip together.
did you guys get along? Did you guys get along?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it was loaded with all the with the top recruits. Some of the top recruits from the Virginia area.
Yeah.
But it was. I just felt that after meeting Bobby Ross, having the opportunity to meet that guy at the time, and he came into my home, it just I felt like it was the right move. Although my parents at the time disagreed with that choice that I had made. They were looking at me like, "You sure that's where you want to go?" I never forget that day because they were sold on that I was going to go to Clemson. And really, I think a lot of it had to do with the opportunity to play with that guy, man, Shawn, again. And that was really, honestly, that was one of the catalysts of one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Maryland also, because I saw the package deal. And so it would have been great to have that opportunity to have those years to play with him. But it was a great experience playing at Maryland University. I went in as a freshman, a redshirt freshman, behind Tommy Neal and Tommy Neal and Alvin Blunt at that time. And so that backfield was pretty crowded. But the opportunity came when we played UVA, and I had an opportunity to break loose. And that's when I kind of got my opportunity to start getting some playing time as a redshirt freshman. And then it went from there. It was great playing with those guys at Maryland University. Great school, great academic school. It was definitely a challenging school in all aspects. Because if you remember the first year we got there, my redshirt freshman year, that was when Lynn Bias had passed away. So we had I had a lot of obstacles to face my redshirt freshman year as an athlete there. So it was just so much that we had to face. And it had a lot of impact on our success after we had won the ACC championship the year before that. So we had great teams, but we just couldn't. It just seemed like we had that dark cloud over us for a couple of years after that.
Yeah. And you did get a trial in the NFL as well, didn't you, Brent? Didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually got picked up by Kansas City. It's funny that you mentioned that. Had an opportunity to go out there, and I was behind Christian Okoye and Barry Word. They was the backfield back then. Steve DeBerg was there, Derek Thomas, all those guys. Bruce Arians was actually the running back coach. He was my running back coach when I was there, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But the opportunity was there for me to make it. I had injured my hamstring, made it all the way down to the last cut, and got injured. And they actually called me back after the season had already started, but they made another phone call and told me to wait, and never got that phone call back. So I then went on and played in the World League and short stint with Canadian football, and that was it. Then came on back here and found myself a job and started working.
That's right. You know, Brent, it's funny. One of the most important factors in athlete success is just staying injury free. And unfortunately, and you've told me your story, and there's 3 big injuries you've already mentioned. And every time if an athlete's arc is like this, every time you get an injury, you do this, and it's always hard to overcome that. And a lot of it's just, a lot of it's just luck, and you gotta Yeah, it's like Chris Warren, I don't think he ever got injured his whole career. And he just,
Yeah.
some people are just, they get lucky that way. But anyway, great career, Bren. And you're a great competitor. I used to love watching you do your thing. And I was at that UVA game. So I do remember that. I was cheering for you. So Larry, my father went to Virginia State. I know a little bit about CIAA football. I used to go to homecoming every year. But everyone talks about the CIAA basketball. The tournament's a huge thing. So what was life like at the CIAA? I know you went to Norfolk State.
Yeah,
and you played down there.
Went to Norfolk State. It was, I mean, coming from Alexandria, coming from TC, it was a culture change, absolutely, on a lot of levels. But it was also, I mean, that first year was it was scary in the sense that I'm just getting used to being back in Virginia, being a part of a team, being a part of a kind of a community in Alexandria, and now I'm leaving to go kind of start and do this all over again. So I came in, there was a couple of us that came in from TC Carlson, Hallam's also came down to Norfolk State, and we were kind of the there was a little bit of shine on us, coming from TC and just winning the state championship. So that both helped and kind of hurt, because it puts a target on you a little bit, like everyone wants to challenge you and test you. But again, that being with 3 or 4 years with these guys, that challenge, those pushes, those one-on-one battles, that was it was already in me. So there was nothing they could do that I haven't seen already. But all the preparation, the detail, was it made a big difference carrying that over into practices, into just preparation. And it's, again, I remember, I think my biggest game was against Virginia Union. Set a record with 4 interceptions in that game.
Wow.
And felt like, okay, maybe I can do this. I moved from corner to free safety, and back and forth. So I was kind of all over the field. And I felt like at the end of the year, at the end of my first year, that I was headed in that direction. I was a Black College All-American. The future was starting to light up a little bit. And then between my freshman and sophomore year, while donating blood at a Red Cross, I was diagnosed with the antibodies that causes AIDS at the time. The term HIV positive didn't exist yet. And I had no idea like where this was coming from. And and then the only thing we knew about HIV at the time was you're going to die. And, Bren mentioned like the year, the earlier, I think that spring when we learned about limb bias and how that shock happened. I think before that, or right around that time, it was Melvin Lindsay, who was, Quiet Storm, WHUR, BET. Seeing him, on Video Soul in December, and then on the front page of the Metro section in April of that following year, he had lost a whole bunch of weight. He had these lesions on him. And by the time the interview happened, before it came to print, he had already passed. And that's my life essentially flashed before my eyes at that point. And I just kept it a secret. I tried to just keep it a secret. I was like being told that the world is going to end. And I couldn't tell anybody. I had to just keep it to myself. So I just put my head down and kept trying to play. There were rumors going around about who I was or who I wasn't, my sexuality or whatever. There was just a bunch of stuff going around at the time, and I wasn't saying anything. So I just kind of kept it to myself. That showed up in my play. It showed up. I played another year and a half there, but I was never the same as good as my freshman year. And then of course, everything in the classroom kind of fell off, and I just kind of dropped off. And then I got to a point where I figured I didn't want to have my family find out through like the media. Like I just show up on in an article on the Post or something, looking like Melvin Lindsay, and that was how my family found out. I didn't want that to happen, so you know, it took me like about 5 years later. I came back home, and eventually I just started to just kind of keep pushing my life forward. And I ended up playing semi-pro. I was still working out. You know, this is like, you know, how football, how the routine and the just that, you know, being on the field, being in between those lines, how that kind of keeps your head right. I was still working out despite everything else happening in my life, despite you know, my life maybe ending. The doctor that diagnosed me told me that I had, you know, maybe 6-7 years to live. Even with all that in my head, I kept doing W's. I kept working out. I kept running. I played semi-pro for about 4.5 years until I tore my Achilles. But I'm still here. So fast forward to now, you know, I got a chance, after all that, I got a chance to go back to TC and be an assistant coach. And that kind of propelled me forward and being involved in a lot of the community work that I do now. I work with the ACLU, I work with NAMI with mental health issues. But that space and time, you know, there was a lot that I learned. I almost died maybe like 3 or 4 times. And it was just kind of holding on to that life preserver. That was those memories. That was the community that supported me. Coming back home helped. Coming back and being around familiar faces helped. And I always keep that to this day. I would trade in any of those moments, even those tryouts that don't turn out into, being signed. I've been I've signed 10-day contracts. I've signed, player contracts just as a free agent, all that stuff. You see people kind of come and go. You see people pass you along the way. All those experiences, all those memories, I wouldn't trade for anything, especially with what I've been through with the process. So again, these brothers right here are like permanently like next to the very most important part of who I am and who I've become, and I'm still here.
Well, Larry, you're an inspiration, man. I mean, you're a very talented guy, the way you tell a story and what you've been through to overcome those, challenges, and saying it lightly, and to be here and tell that story. That's amazing. So I thank you for doing that. And I know it couldn't be easy, but that's amazing. Glenn, first I want to thank you for putting this amazing panel together. I had no idea you guys are going to be so awesome. When I think about Titans, I don't think about great storytellers. I think about pain, and usually I think about L's. But this has been great to reconnect. But I would like to finish, and Glenn, that's a hard act to follow right there. But I'd like to finish by talking about what being a Titan and being a champion meant to you, to your life. What did that 85 season and that life mean to you the rest of your life? And if you could start out with that, please.
Sure. So my dad, he was a very influential person in my life. He passed away from cancer about maybe 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he always told me if I wanted to have good success, think about others' success, and then success will follow. And so that was my mantra. It is today as well, but he instilled that in myself and my brother at an early age. And so when I got up to, even the Hammond, they were great athletes. Then of course at TC Williams, great athletes. I just wanted to compete, right? Because my job is, as the quarterback or the point guard or whatever position I played, I wanted to do all that I could to put my players in a position to succeed. And if I could do that, then I would be a winner. No matter if the score dictated we won or lost, my dad would always say, if you want to be a success, help others first and success will follow. And so by me being surrounded by guys like Bren and Shawn and Tex, every game was like, if you were a coach, right, and you really studied our film in football, we were kind of predictable, hard to stop, but predictable. And I'll give you an example. If the first touchdown was Rodney, okay, don't be concerned about Rodney. Now it's Shawn's turn. Okay, Shawn get his touchdown. Okay, now it's Bren's turn. So if you really methodically watch the film, you can see that like every single game, right? And to me, that meant more to me than any individual accolades that I achieved because it was so much talent, unbelievable talent. And my father, after every game, after we would go out for a little while, and then we'd come back in and watch the film, and he would show me some areas in which I can improve upon because it meant so much may succeed. And if that happened, then I knew some good things were going to be in place for sure. And I took that mantra to Holy Cross as well, which allowed me to have some success, on the college basketball level as well. So even today, it's all about, teaching, leading, and serving. And, just to be a part of these guys' lives, like I am today, it means a whole lot to me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, thanks again, Glenn. I have to say, I always love playing against you because you always play hard. You never talk junk. We were always cool right after the game. And it was always fun for us to go at it. Like I said, I don't think I ever got the best of you, but it was still always fun. And I really appreciate you doing this. And it's been great reconnecting with you. So Shawn, why don't you go next? What does a Titan mean to you, and what is it, and how has it helped form your life?
Well, like Glenn just finished saying, my inspiration was always my youngest brother, Rodney. I mean, just the fact that we got a chance to play with each other, not just at the high school level, but on the middle school level also. He always was a hard worker. Right? My youngest brother worked hard at everything, and things came kind of easy for me. I mean, my talent was there. All I had to do was tap into it. He worked hard at everything, and the fact that he was doing well at the game of football, and the fact that when we went to TC, once he got there, once he got there with us, it was a transformation for his career. I mean, he was the type of player that didn't really think that he was at that level, but once him and Brent got together in that backfield, it was something to. I mean, we used to be at awe just watching him and Brent run down the field and do the things they did. So his inspiration, his attitude, his fortitude to do what he did at the game of football just helped me motivate myself and be the person who I am today, along with all the rest of these guys I have on my team. We can tell stories for days about all the different athletes that played on our squad. I mean, like I said, it would have to be another podcast, but we have some names that we can go down the list, and we can tell you some things about some of our athletes that we played with. Everybody thought we did great things. They never even talked about our defense, never even talked about it. And they were unbelievable. So the fact that we was able to take this team and watch the things that happened the year before that when we lost to Mount Vernon, and saw the pain and hurt on our players when they did get a chance to win that game and go to state, it made us understand that we have something special. And if we tap into it, this is something that we can carry with us for life. We knew how important it was to win a state championship. We knew some of us wasn't going to go on to do college or go on to be in the NFL, but we knew if we had an opportunity to win a state championship, it wasn't just for us, it was for all of us, not the team that won it all, but the team that didn't win it. They all can take pleasure in the knowing of the fact that we were a part of a team